Two, one. Hey, welcome to Talking in Stations. This is Matterall. I'm here with my friend Kenneth Feld. How's it going, Kenneth?
Pretty good. How's it going for you?
All right. We still have you sequestered to keep you safe from all the crowd and stuff. But today we're going to talk about your specialty, which is industry, and some of the stuff that's in this next patch, which is actually landing tomorrow. We'll go over what's in this patch with Kenneth for some clarity, and that way you'll know exactly what actually is in the patch and what's not. All right, it's taken a while to get here. We don't have patch notes, but we have an overview that was put out by CCP Paragon. That just came out a few minutes ago. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so first of all, there's going to be extended downtime. And that just means that the usual 15 minutes or so of downtime is going to be, what'd they say here, 30 minutes?
I believe it's an hour and 20.
Hour 20, right. So 12:20, okay, UTC. So usually that happens when there's, something significant going on, and this is a significant change. But let's look at...
It's a big database change. All of the mining crystals in the game are all getting swapped out. I think there's 16 or 18 skills that are getting removed and 5 new skills going in, something like that. Plus all the refunding and all that. So
Yeah.
they're touching a lot of areas. I don't know if technically that's brain in a box area. It may end up in the same database. You definitely don't want me messing with that stuff. But when you start messing with refunding skills, putting in new skills, and then just a migration of all the BPOs, Tech 1 and Tech 2 BPOs, because there's a lot of Tech 2 BPOs for all the old mining crystals for the mineral ore, plus any Tech 2 BPCs, they all have to get migrated over. Plus, they have to seed the B type and C type BPOs. I mean, there's a ton of back end stuff that's going to happen for this.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me that it's longer than even an hour.
You mentioned brain in the box. That's actually kind of a technical term. Do you want to describe what the brain in the box is?
Duh. All I know is way back when they offloaded all of your brain to another box. So all your implants, I think your skills are part of that too. So that when you load the the stuff for your brain, all your head cheese and everything loads from a separate server to offload that duty from Tranquility. But it also means if something happens with brain in a box, then your skills are messed up, your implants are messed up, all kinds of crazy stuff. So I know that when they know they're going to mess with that part of it, they double check, take their time, all that kind of stuff to make sure nothing crazy happens there.
Yeah, so, and that's important because it was part of the CCP technology. You have so many people in this game, and they all exist in the same shard, the same world, that they need to find ways to optimize the server and the data. So every time you enter a system, not only does the system stuff have to load, the environment stuff have to load, but each character that enters that system has to have calculations about how efficient they are in their ship with those modules. That's a ton of calculating per person. And with all the bonuses and stuff that skills and attributes and stuff go. So they took all that part of it and just as Kenneth said, they outsourced it to a different server, and that's the brain in the box concept. So that's what that is. So when there's database changes, as Kenneth was saying, and they affect the character part, you're going to see some additional downtime normally. Okay, let's have a look at what's actually in this thing. So first of all, extended downtime, but what's to go live tomorrow on December 7th? I'll put this first one out here. Doubling most amount of resources as described in the dev blog. So yay, end of scarcity. There's twice as much stuff out there.
End of shortage.
Thank you. Right. Gonna have to fight for these terms to make sure we have it right. So end of shortages.
The CSM fought for months to get CCP to say it right And now, the message has to be right as well. We finally convinced them that scarcity is a term by players, and they acknowledge that in one of the blogs, that all they can do is put the resources out there. Scarcity is a term that the players had, and we decide when scarcity is over, not CCP. All CCP can do is double the resources, this and that, and then when the players decide it's over, then it's over. Or the Germans bomb Pearl Harbor, one or the other.
Well, that's very interesting. I didn't know scarcity actually came from players until you mentioned it. So it's not a CCP term, and it's not an official doctrine or era or any of that stuff. But they did seem to adopt what players were saying sometimes in their language. And I think that's what you're saying. CSM said, get that out of your language. That's not your language.
Right. The CCP language was shortage, and we said, stick with your shortage, and let the players decide when scarcity is over.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, we'll take questions after we go through this stuff. Let's go back to this. All right, so doubling.
Now it says most resources. I think there's one crociter maybe that isn't getting doubled. I don't remember what it was. There was one little tidbit of something that didn't get doubled, but everything else, basically take the number, multiply by 2, and that's the new quantity.
Wow, straight double. And we're talking about asteroids and belts, and what else?
Asteroids and belts, gas, both are all three. So Cyto, Myco, and wormhole gas. I think Cyto is the gas that's in the certain constellations that was used to make drugs. Mito is the gas mostly found in low sec. All three are used for capital production now. But then the wormhole gas, which is used for Tech 3 production and also capital production now, they're just getting flat doubled across the board. And then moons right now pull at 20,000 cubic meters per hour. So if you have a moon and you pull for, we'll say, let's see, 6 days, that's 144 hours. That's an easy number. So at 144 hours, you would pull 20,000 cubic meters per hour times 144, and that's the total amount pulled from that moon. And then the percentage of whatever quantity of stuff was in there, you multiply it by that percentage, and that's how much shows up in your ore field. That 20,000 is being doubled to 40,000. So twice as much will show up in your ore field. And the rigs also affect that. So the rigs now will be twice as effective as they were before because they're a straight percentage increase. So for the R64s and 32s, we're really looking at rigging our stuff because it's a percentage of a number that's twice as big now. So the math starts to get more in our favor.
So by improving the efficiency of your moon mining stations, you're basically getting a bigger bonus.
Correct. Yeah, because the base number doubled. So your percentage is based off of a number that's twice as high as it was before. And then ice is just being flat doubled across the board. And this was after essentially a 300% increase a few months ago. So I think from 6 months ago to now, ice is being increased like 600%. I think that's the number. Don't quote me on that, but it's a significant increase over the past 6 months, and that was pushed heavily by the CSM because isotope prices and stuff were getting up there.
Okay, so again, this is asteroids in different resources, but asteroids in belts. Asteroids anywhere else? Like, what about missions? There's some asteroids in missions sometimes. Anomalies.
I don't. I'm pretty sure it'll be in the patch notes. I can't talk about it because it hasn't been public, But I can tell you, I'm confident in saying this, that missions and things. So, like, if you had a mission to go mine something, normally there was only enough there to mine to get you what you needed to turn in. There wasn't too much extra. But now you don't know if someone's going to go out there with type A crystals, B crystals, C crystals, Tech 1, whatever. So there were and I'm not saying there are going to be problems because I haven't run the missions on Sissy, but there were measures in place to make sure that under most conditions you would still be able to complete the mission. If you can't for some reason, or you find you're short or something like that, please bug report it and get the bug report number to one of your, your local CSM rep, or feel free to hit me up on Discord, and we'll get that looked at right away.
All right. So reemphasizing that scarcity, is a player term, but shortages that were created by CCP by taking away a lot of, I believe they took away a lot of mining opportunity out there. They are restoring that, and that looks like the doubling of most resources that are out there, except our friend tells us that B. Cone says Mercoxit will not be doubled since that was dealt with before.
Okay. I knew there was something. There's like one or two caveats to that, but by and large, it was.
Okay. So, and one more thing for players that aren't that familiar with mining, this is not you're not going to find things more frequently. You're just going to find more of it when you find it. So it's not the frequency, it's more the amounts inside the belts themselves. So belts are all staying the same as far as locations and stuff. Okay, the next thing is, so that's number one, doubling of most resources as described in DevBlog. Number two is reduced bill of materials required for manufacture of subcapital and capital components. That seems new.
That was in the spreadsheet that was in the original DevBlog, and that hasn't really changed. So all they did was a lot of the P4 PI that was in capital components is being reduced. It won't affect the price a whole lot, maybe a little bit, but it's a small percentage of the price. Let's just put it like that. Yeah. But the hauling and the complexity will go down quite a bit.
All right. How much do you think this will alleviate the burden on capital ship yards?
Nah. Spit in the ocean.
So very little. Okay. Next is balance adjustments to various mining and industrial ships. That's a very small sentence for a very big change.
Let me go back to that last one for a little bit, because it talks about more than just the components. So the water that goes into, it's a core temperature regulator, that was cut in half. That will make a significant difference in hauling. So to give you an idea, an Avatar would take 6 freighters of water. Now it will only take 3 freighters of water. Now we can argue whether 3 freighters is still dumb or not, which probably is, but 6 to 3 is quite a bit. Something else that people are getting their head wrapped around: back in the day, when you refined minerals for an Avatar, it was about 67 freighters worth. We're down to about 51 freighters, and after this change, we'll be at 48 freighters. So it's still a lot less than before. It's just different. And people are clinging on to, hey, there's 6 freighters of water. And yes, that sounds stupid, but you're at 51 freighters instead of 67 or 68 before, when it was just straight minerals. So it's still less, but players will never be happy about anything until it's all just press button, get bacon. So it's just something to think about. So sorry, on to your next thing. Yeah, balance adjustments.
Hold on, I want to keep it there for a second, because there were some changes. There were some changes before about adjusting PI materials and putting them in moons. And that was an experiment that they floated, and it was for this area to relieve some of the pressure on capital shipyards, but they have moved those changes out, and those are not coming through.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. I have said multiple times what I advocated for was R64 definitely has R4 components in it. I think it's R32 does as well. 16 doesn't. It's kind of the chart kind of goes. But anyway, what I wanted was to take some of the R4 reprocessed goo out of R64 moons or R64 ore and move it into R4 ore. So basically, it wouldn't increase the amount in game appreciably. You're not just adding more to R4 just out of thin air. Take it from R64, add it to R4, and that way the R4 would reprocess into more and replace the lost income that way. Um, I,
How much can you
I
say?
don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I think he put out that he's going to look at it again. I'm not really sure, to be honest. But
Where it's ended up.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I know where it's ended up. It ended up with no change.
But is that where it
But
ends up, or is there ends up for now?
I'm not sure that there was an update to the update to the update, updating the update, and I don't really know. I mean, I'm sure. Let me bring it up to make sure because I don't want to say something,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure that he said that they still want to remove the minerals and they'll look at it later.
I
But
see. Yeah, yeah,
I'm
that's what he said. I think that is what he said.
okay.
So
Yeah.
what
So
what we're talking about is there are moons, they have a certain rarity, right? Like if an R4 is not very rare and an R64 is very rare and has very precious stuff on it. The R4 has less precious stuff on it. So people aren't inclined to mine those since it takes the same amount of actual labor to mine them. So you have to incentivize people. And so how they've incentivized R4s is to put added minerals in it. And they want to take those minerals out of those moons. And they were going to replace it with PI, which would, and that's planetary interaction, or I forget what they call it now, materials, which help you build components that build capital ships these days. And that was going to alleviate the capital shipyard burden of sourcing the stuff because they could source it off the cheapest moons, the most frequent moons. But they scrubbed that idea. And instead, what they focused on was reducing the hauling necessity for so much material for the capital ship. So in other words, you don't have to haul as much water to build a capital ship as you did before. And that's what Kenneth was saying earlier. So that's where they focused the change, which is, I think, where a lot of the complaining was pointing to from players. It's the hauling that's the problem. It's not the resourcing of the parts that build the subparts that build the Titans or the capital ships. Okay. Anything else on that? Oh, the last thing Kenneth said was they do want to take the straight minerals out of moon or moon asteroids, and that will happen later.
right, I'm trying to pull that up now just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said. I don't want to put words in his mouth without reading them, but I
Hey,
think that's what it said.
that's my memory too, but look at us. Okay, you want me to wait for you then, or can I go on to the next one?
No, go ahead. I'll just keep reading while you're talking.
All right, the next change is balance adjustments for various mining and industrial ships. Again, I'll reiterate, that's a very small sentence for a very big group of changes since they're rebalancing the Rorqual, the Orca. Those are industrial command ships. Those are basically capital ships. And they are also rebalancing out the mining barges and even mining frigates. So a lot of changes in this area. Oh, the Porpoise too, which is another command ship
Well,
for mining.
the Porpoise and the mining frigates, I don't think received any or very, very minor changes. And as far as I know, I think they're going to be addressed when compression comes around.
Right.
But the barges and the exhumers got basically, you look at 100 stats, 99 of them changed, one stayed the same. They still mine or something, they can fit strip miners. Other than that, pretty much nothing was left the same. No stone was left unturned. Um, Orcas got um, a nerf to drone yield, but they got a industrial core, much like the Rorqual has. And with a Tech 2 industrial core and the industrial core active, the bonus to mining yield put them back at the same place they are today. They just have to use the industrial core to get there. So their yield technically didn't change, but it did. The base yield changed. It's just with the industrial core bonus, they're back to where they were. So it cost them a little bit of heavy water to get that same yield as original.
Got it.
Excuse me for a second.
Yeah, go ahead. So I think the other thing, and it would be interesting to go over the philosophy of the changes, which was to change the real mining ships that you want out there back to barges, back to exhumers, exhumers are the more technical version of the barges. These are large ships. They have a large capacity to mine, and there are 3 different types, and they have different strengths. But they wanted to make the Hulk, which is the fastest miner, the fastest barge. Actually, it's the exhumer. They wanted to make that to be the king of mining. So that did happen, although it's a little easier to destroy than some of its sister ships. So the point is, the barges and the exhumers are supposed to be the mining fleet, and they moved the Orca, which is a command ship, and the Rorqual back to more of a boosting and support role instead of straight mining with drones, which a lot of people were doing for a while. So,
well, the Rorqual did get nerfed 33% across the board, but
it's mining
it is
capability.
it's still very, very capable. So a Hulk with B crystals, which are a little bit quicker than A crystals with a little bit more waste, but the waste is almost the same as a Rorqual. The Hulk will beat the Rorqual by about 5% or so with Rorqual bonuses, but a Hulk with A-type crystals still mines a little bit less than a Rorqual. So a Rorqual is still basically in second place. It's not been decimated by what? Someone's pinging me. So it's not decimated by any stretch.
Yeah.
It's still up second from the top, basically. But as far as easier to kill, something that a lot of people don't realize, I don't think, because they haven't really seen it much. When you go to shoot a Rorqual, they hit their panic button and then they go, haha, we get a 5-minute timeout while, defense fleet goes. If you're mining with Hulks and there's a Rorqual boosting and the Rorqual hits their panic, it panics all of the industrial ships as well. So it means they can't warp off, but it also means that they're safe for that same amount of time for a response fleet to get there.
I see. So, okay, so the umbrella theory. Okay, I guess that's a lot of weeds, but basically, the Orca has always been able to cocoon and protect, make invulnerable its fleet for a certain amount of time. I think it was 5 minutes, 7 minutes at one point, but now I think it's 5 minutes. And so you're saying, remember that you could still, the panic button is still valuable because whether you're just securing your your Rorqual or securing your Hulks that are around your Rorqual, it still keeps them safe for the 5 minutes that is necessary to get defense fleets out to defend your mining fleet.
Correct.
Okay. And something else about the Hulk, if you're saying that the Rorqual is just a little bit slower than the Hulk at mining, to give you an idea of what a big change that was over a long period of time, because they've been nerfing Rorqual for a long time in different ways. When the Rorqual was first rebalanced to make it a supreme mining platform, it was mining 5.5 Hulks. So it's over all this time.
There was a period of a couple weeks there where it was closer to 8, I think.
When it first
when it first came out, CCP didn't realize that the drone rigs affected the excavators. So everyone was rigging with two Tech 2s and a Tech 1, which is all the calibration that you have, and getting significantly more yield than CCP had calculated. This is what, back in 17 or 18, whenever, or 16, whenever it was.
17, I think.
So it was, you were yielding significantly more than they calculated. And it didn't take them long, maybe a month or two. And they were like, no, we got to stop this.
Yeah.
This is, way overboard. And they were monsters then. And then that nerf came in and they just came down to extremely OP, and then they left them that way for a little bit. And CCP said, "Hey, we may have a problem here," So they knocked them down again and again, and then cut the speed of the excavators. And they've probably been nerfed 4 or 5 times over
Yeah.
the years, and they're just not sustainable the way that they are. So this time they instead of, like before, they were just like chopping off toes. This time they just hit the ankles and just like knocked them down a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're still eligible to be balanced at any time. So, or any ship is really. So, I'm sure it will be monitored, and if they still become a problem, I think waste will really stop that issue
Yeah.
for the most part.
But we'll get to waste in a minute because they changed the name of it. But just to put it in perspective, players came in with a Rorqual able to mine 8 times the speed of a Hulk. And then they fixed it to about 5.5, I think it was, for a Hulk, which is still a lot. And over a period of 5 or 6 nerfs, I think that's about right, they tried to get the Rorqual back into some kind of shape. In the meantime, you had this incredible prosperity going on. So that's what players are used to. That's what players were calibrated to work towards. So when all this gets chopped back, you can see where a lot of the player upset comes from. They were working towards that career, or they were in that career making a ton of mineral wealth, and now that has been completely reduced to 1/5, 1/8 what it was before.
Right, but ships get nerfed all the time. I mean, my Titan used to be able to fit Hawes. Now it can't. I didn't go shoot a monument over that. Super carriers used to be able to fit a triage module and rep like a Banshee. Now they can't even fit reps. Didn't cry over that. Was I happy? No, but I understood. And this is the same way.
I used to have unlimited jump capability on the carrier, right?
Exactly. How many times was that going to be the death of PL? Same thing with everything else. A year and a half ago, whatever, when all this started, every nullsec entity was going to need a high-sec division to mine Veldspar. 4, 5, 6 months later, no, you don't need to mine Veldspar anymore because they changed the industry patch came out. Now you need to do PI or something. I don't know. Now they're reducing the amount of PIs, and now there's going to be something else. It's always going to be something that people are going to latch on to and complain about until the next thing. And then they'll forget about the last thing and then move on to something else.
I think, to be fair, what was very different about this, because you're right, things change, people adapt. But what was very different about this was that you could do a lot, you could get a lot of benefit without actually sitting there and playing the game, because you could put yourself in a situation that was fairly safe, other people watching over you. You could deploy the money-making machine, the Rorqual, out there, and then you could do something else. And so it was a lot of...
I still have an issue with that. Even with the waste, you can put a Rorqual somewhere, and if you get a rock big enough, you can mine for 36 minutes and not touch it. Whereas the Hulk, in 36 minutes, you're going to have a bazillion clicks to outmine it by 5%. I have suggested making the excavators not auto mine. So you deploy them, you lock a rock, you press F. I think their cycle time's like a minute, so they got to travel there, mine for a minute, travel back. Once they travel back and deposit, they orbit, and then you have to press F again and have them go mine. The only problem is that's stupidly bottable. I mean,
yeah, sure.
So
not enough variation in it.
Right. Yeah. Maybe something. I would like to see a fighter mechanic for them. Whereas you send them out, they go out, they mine, then they come back, and then you have to send them out again, type thing, or something like that. But I don't know that CCP has the time or the resources for that.
Right. But the point is not to keep
so
it so AFK gameplay,
correct,
because it's still lucrative. And that was the whole point. So you had people that were making a ton more and in relatively safe and passive ways. And that was very desirable. So that has been nerfed all to hell. And with this patch, it's trying to put back some more resources, but that's what a lot of the actual undertow is in these waves is the people are basically upset because they were working towards that money-making machine. So again, rebalance of ships, big deal, lots of stuff going on, but the Hulk becomes the king of mining again, as it was, and the Exhumers and that mining gang game style seems to be coming back. Okay, next thing is...
hold on, to circle back,
Mm-hmm.
His actual statement is, after some lengthy conversations, we've decided to release, for this release, to withdraw all changes to ubiquitous moon ores, which is the R4s, in relation to their refined materials, i.e. minerals. They will retain their current quantities, blah, blah, blah. We still plan to remove all basic minerals from all moons, and we will reevaluate options during or after the compression update. So that's your warning. It's coming. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just told you what I'm advocating for, and there you go. I really don't know what's going to happen there, but it will be visited again. Something else he adds in that's kind of interesting. We still plan to make adjustments to PI as per our plans to reduce manufacturing costs. More on the winter Outlook blog, which now says coming soon, not next week, which was, I think, a week or two ago. And we are currently considering the reduction of volume for all PI tiers. So that could be significant depending on what the volume reduction is. And it says here all, and he put capitalized and italicized and bold, or capitalized and bold, all. So to me, that means P1 or P0 through P4, which could help logistics for tons of things.
Yeah. So what the developers are trying to do here is to find the right balance between what makes people go out and resource things that they need to build capital ships. Let's just say that's the example. And so they can either add more stuff harvested, they could add less, or they could reduce the amount of things that you need to build. And it looks like they're kind of hitting it on both ends. Later, they're going to adjust it to give you maybe more PI, to look at the whole system and to put that into a better, healthy place, to balance those two things out. So you want things to be valuable so they sell on the market, so that people that don't want to do the work can just buy it. So you want that market to exist. But you also don't want to discourage people from doing it, because it's such an endless, what do they call it? Tedious. Some players call it tedious work to get what they really want, which is something else. All right. So next thing is the ore processing skill migration into new skills, including ISK and overflow skill points reimbursed for injected skill books and trained skills.
Right, this is the part that was 100% me. I've heard one person that doesn't like it. Everybody else likes it.
What can we call this? Feld what?
I don't know, but I was so scared because I got blamed for so much crap during the industry patch that I had nothing to do with. And this patch, the only thing that no one except for one person that I've talked to had a problem with, and everyone likes it, I get nothing. So
this is
you
Feld
win some, you lose
aerobics.
some.
Yeah, this is what you're actually responsible for.
Right, but and this is 100. This was my suggestion. I helped, work on it, that kind of stuff. So, but what essentially it does is, if you had an ore reprocessing skill, I don't know about Mercoxit, because Mercoxit really isn't changing. It's the same it's the same skill all by itself before and after. So I don't know if that gets refunded or not, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know if it has to affect the new crystals or what. I don't know. But basically, anything else except for moons, moons were already squished when they came out, which is what gave me the idea. But if you have any of the mineral ore or the Triglavian ore, they are all getting all the skill points refunded, and they'll go into your unallocated skill points. And the market or the whatever NPC price for the skill books is all getting refunded to your wallet. And then when the patch comes out, you can buy the new skills, and they've been named now, by the way. It was in the last Hobo leaks. That's where I learned about it. But I don't really care about the name, so I
Yeah.
didn't ask. I'm sure they would have told me if I asked. But the new Hobo leaks has the new skill names for the 5 or 6 different categories. But so you'll be able to buy those skill books, inject them, and then take the skill points that you got refunded and instantly inject those skills up to where you had before. And as far as I know, anything but like the bottom one or the bottom two, it's the same skill points. They didn't reduce any of those. So like if you were mining Arcanor, Bisto, Crocite, and whatever the fourth one is, I think Spod there, and you had all those to level 4, whatever you got refunded from those 4 is pretty close to what it's going to take to get that new combined skill back to level 4. It's the Veldspar, Scordite, Pyro, and Plagio where the most benefit happens. So if you had those at 4 to use Tech 2 crystals, whatever you got refunded, in order to get the new skill to level 4, it's going to use much less skill points. And overall, if you had them everything trained to level 5, and then got it all refunded and trained all of the new skills up to level 5, you would have 1.79 million, 77 million, so right around 1.8 million left over that would stay in your unallocated that you could use for something else.
Okay. So, and this is a big change. They weren't going to do this. You did mention it. Can you talk about that a little bit? How much of that can you discuss? And why would you make this? Why would you suggest this change?
Well, my main reason was twofold. One, if anyone's mined and you have freaking 600 crystals in your Hulk, it's a pain because you have to have, if you're using Tech 2 crystals, they burn out pretty quick. So you have to have 2 to use. And then if you're going to be mining for a little bit, you need at least 1 backup, if not a second backup for when they burn out. Um, and then in the old anomalies where you'd have 5 or 6, maybe 7 different ores, you had to have, like 4 of each of them. And then your ore or your cargo hold would fill up. So then you're like, well, okay, I'll mine these. Then you had to go back and get more crystals or get them from the Rorqual, or, it was just a Tetris nightmare. So the reduction in that alone will be nice because now you need 1 crystal and you can mine Arcanor, Bisto, Crocite, and Spod, I think is the 4 in the highest category. So 1 crystal will take care of all of those. The second thing is, and the reason that the low end is where you get the most skill points back, is because for a new player to get into a barge or an exhumer and use Tech 2 crystals, it was a significant train. And they would train 4 or 5 days. They finally get in their barge. I can use strip miners. Okay, well, I want to use Tech 2. Well, then it was 4 or 5 days. Oh, I can use Veldspar Tech 2 crystals now. Oh, but I can't mine this Scordite, which is right next to it. So there'd be another 4 or 5 days to mine the Scordite. And then, oh, there's Plagio. Plagio. So then it'd be another 4 or 5 days to mine the Plagio. And it just seemed like a never ending, oh my goodness. So at least now they train the one single skill. It'll be less trained than all 4 of the ones combined. That's why there's lower skill points. They can get into a Tech 1 crystal faster and get into a Tech 2 crystal faster. So it was very new player friendly on the low end. Now, once you get up to the high end, you're not a new player anymore. If you're going to be mining Arcanor and Bisto, the new player things kind of, it gets gray at that point. So the skill points are still there for that. It's only on the low end that it helps out the new players. And that was my second big motivation for that.
So it seems like, and I would take issue with this sort of thing because I like the slower burn of EVE Online, slower climb through skills, the slower acquisition of expertise. So you have something to look forward to, right? Like I got Veldspar, now I'm going to go for the Scordite. But CCP has to look at, and you guys have to look at, what is frustrating gameplay where you're in a place, you want to do a thing, and for no other reason that there is a timer to learn a skill, you can't just mine the Veldspar and then switch to the next type of asteroid because you don't have that skill yet. That does seem like kind of a bummer with not a lot of upside for the progression weighting. Like it doesn't, between low ore and high ore, I could see that, as you've described, make more sense.
And the other thing, just the complexity of the crystals. You're a new player. Oh, I got Tech 2 Veldspar and Tech 2 Scordite. So then you have all these crystals in your cargo, and a Veldspar rock pops, and then Scordite is the next one that you locked. Oh, I forgot to change crystals, and now you're mining at half the rate because you have to use Scordite crystals on Scordite, or you don't get the bonus from the crystals. It's just a lot of complexity and skill there that we could just get rid of in one fell swoop. So it was new player friendly, a lot less complexity, and fit in with the scheme that was already established for moon mining. So when I suggested it, it took them a couple days. They had a meeting, and they're like, "Yes, we're going to do this." It was kind of a no brainer. Everyone saw the tremendous upsides there, and it kind of made everything homogenous. All the moon categories were all together. Now the mineral categories will be together. So it made sense, and it more or less it made financial sense too, because the new quadrant is all about welcoming new players into Eve that were from quadrant 3. So it just fell into that theme and made sense, and that's why they did it.
Yeah. Okay, good. So it fit into where they were going anyway. So, but the upside to this is that you're going to get, if you had all the skills that were required for advanced mining, you're going to get some skill points back, and those are going to be unallocated, which is a good thing.
So for PvP players who their PvP player started out mining, or they mined for a little bit and then said, "Hey, I'd rather shoot somebody," and they've been lamenting having all these mining skills over the years, and haven't extracted them. Now they get a free extraction and refund of the skill books even. So you get to correct a mistake, I guess, if you'd like to say it that way.
Right. So the thing that we warned people about, we didn't warn, we gave a heads up early on when we saw these changes was, look, an opportunity for unallocated skill points, which are great. I call them the stem cells of EVE learning. And so it allows you to put those skill points in any pocket that you want. You want to put them into boosting other players, you could do that. You want to put them into medium-sized specialized weaponry, you could do that. They're unallocated at 100%. So because injectors have diminishing returns, this is a workaround from that. So any opportunity you get from CCP to get a reimbursement for skills, that kind of opportunity, you need to jump on that right away. So we advised that every player should be training into reprocessing skills for Veldspar, for Scordite, for any of these things, because those were going to transition into unallocated as soon as this patch hits, which is tomorrow. So there you go. Let's go to the next one. So we talked about skills, and here's the second part of that. Mining crystals added. Current inventories of previous crystals will be migrated to the new ones. You already covered
so that. Everything that's in the game will be migrated to A types. And then the only thing that will be added for B types and C types is the blueprints.
Okay. And is this okay? And we saw some imagery of the laser hitting the asteroid. It looks like they've upgraded the graphics.
Yes, I didn't Hmm.
The A's are very precise. The B's have a little bit of more of a flare, and then the C's have this incredible like flare all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. And that was something that I asked for, um, just so people know when the C's are working. Um, you know,
What's
I
so
wanted
special
like
about
a.
a C working? Why would you need to identify that visually?
Okay, so the C crystals are kind of loosely termed the PVP crystal. Their wastage is 50 59%, I think, which is added to the 34% from the Tech 2. So you end up at like 93% wastage probability. So that means every cycle, random number, 93%, you have wastage, um, 7% you don't. So the way that wastage is calculated is you take your yield. So if wastage happens, the calculate your wastage, your yield times your wastage factor. So the yield got dropped to 0.2%. So you get 20% yield. So say you were mining a rock and you were pulling 100 units to your ship. Your your yield now is going to be 20, but your wastage factor or your wastage multiplier, I think, is 28 now. Is that what it is? I think it's 28. Um, so if 20 goes in your cargo hold, 20 times 28 is what, 560? Yeah. So
Sure.
560 goes poof. And then if you started off with 5,000 in the asteroid that you were mining, 20 goes to your hold, 560 goes poof. That's 580 total removed from that rock. So that rock would now have 4,420 left. And you do that cycle again. So basically, it will deplete the rock at a rapid pace. And this could be done for a couple reasons. Say you're mining an anomaly and there's one rock left and you really don't care about the ore, you just want the anomaly to respawn because you want the other type of ore that's there. If you mine it with the C type crystals, it will waste the rock as fast as much faster than anything else in the game. You may not get as much from it in your cargo hold, but the rock will go away quicker. As soon as the rock goes away, it starts the respawn timer and a new anomaly can respawn. The other thing that can happen is if you're running around with a C type crystal and you're in enemy space, or you find say you find a moon in lowsec that belongs to XX and you don't like XX and they're not mining it yet or it just popped, you can run over there with a barge with some C crystals and basically delete all of their R64 at a rapid pace. If someone comes in local or whatever, you can skedaddle, but you can burn up their precious ore at a much, much faster pace. And it's about the original blog, it was about 4.5 times faster. Now with the change, it's like 5.6 times faster, I think.
Ooh, they
So
increased
whatever
it.
you could mine, you don't get as much in your cargo hold, but that's actually a good thing because you don't want your mining hold to fill up or you'll stop mining. So, but it does burn the rock at 5.6 times the rate as if you were just mining it.
Okay. So I'm sure this came up. Like, what are the use cases for this? For obviously, you can go and mine enemy territory. Two empires together, equal size, picking on each other. It's fine. Where you have, say, in high sec, people coming into areas just eviscerating, basically erasing asteroid belts for fun. Have you guys thought about like the griefing possibilities with this? Is that part of the equation?
Yes, especially in high sec, and I'm not sure. I know at one point you were going to get a suspect flagged if you use a Type C in high sec, and honestly, I don't know if that got removed or not. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
Something
sure.
just for, yeah, high security space.
Right, but that's something, and that was also the reason for the big bright flary
Right.
thing, so
To
that
see
you
it.
can tell that someone's using it type
Well,
thing.
because we were talking about people infiltrating your, they have alts, right? So they use an alt in your mining fleet. They're not on your team, but they're posing as one of your team members, but they're eviscerating and erasing all the rocks and not really making much. But now you can actually see that in space, right? If you're looking at the actual asteroids, you can see when a type C is being used. Makes sense.
Yeah, you definitely want to see where it was being used for sure.
Because before that, you'd have to go to the space mining ledger and have a look and audit it and say, okay, well, this guy here, he's not, he's wasting a lot. Let's kick him out or not invite him next time. But this you can do real time. Okay, next thing. Old mining crystals blueprints will migrate into new blueprints. I think you basically covered that. If there's anything else you want to say on that?
Nah, that's pretty much, I mean, they're just getting straight copied over. So it's just a straight up swap.
Okay. Oh, one question I had. If you have a queue full of reprocessing skills that are going away, what happens to that queue? Does it just completely go to zero, like everything get deleted from it and you're not training anything?
Yeah, I would imagine if you're training reprocessing skills, I would add another skill to the end of that. So when all the reprocessing skills go away, that you have something to take the slack at the end.
Great tip. I think I did that because I thought of that, but that's a great tip. Yeah, check your learning queues if your skills have been taken out of the game. It's very rare this happens, but check it out. So the next one is new Orca industrial core added and existing industrial cores renamed.
Yeah, for the longest time, it was labeled as compact in the dev blogs and stuff, and people had huge heartaches with that. Oh, the amount of DMs I got over that is insane. It was just a placeholder, and I think they've settled on large and capital. I'm not really sure. The last time I checked Sissy, I think that's what they were. So now it's going to be a large industrial core for the Orca and a capital for the Rorqual. But don't quote me on that. But I'm 99% sure the Orca is a large, and I think they renamed the Rorqual to a capital.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, next thing is new gas cloud harvesters added, including blueprints and existing modules renamed. There was some talk about changing the mining frigates to basically beginner miner frigates. And you thought that was a bad idea. Looks like CCP agreed and they changed their mind on that. You want to explain what happened there?
What was that again?
The mining frigates.
What?
The cloud mining frigates.
Right. I don't speak about the whys too much, and in this case, I really don't even know. I didn't really care. The biggest thing was, to me, they always seemed like the day trip type ship. You did stuff in them that you wouldn't normally do in a more expensive ship. They're kind of like the stealth bombers of the mining world, right? They're small, they're agile, they can get places. 4 or 5 of those in a porpoise, go into a wormhole, mine gas for the day, and get out type thing. You could do the same thing in low sec, put C-type crystals on them, and go in and you can lay waste to a R64 moon quickly with 4 or 5 of those and a porpoise and some C-type crystals. So that was always kind of my, I guess, the way that I thought of them. And I thought they were kind of getting away from that. And they were also, like, the Venture was also a very low skill ship. So, and they kind of got away from that as well. So I think that they put the gas bonus back, and I really don't know what's going to happen to them. I think someone has said the porpoise will get looked at during the compression changes. Well, it has to, because compression should be coming to the porpoise. It was announced in the original blog, so I would imagine that they still put it on there. So, some things are going to have to change when compression finally does come. and they'll probably do a little more comprehensive look then. But
Yeah.
I don't know what, I mean, that's going to be in 2022. So I really don't know. We haven't seen any type of plan for that yet.
So these new gas harvesters, I haven't heard much about these. Are they what they just fit on exhumers or something, or what do you know about these, if anything?
Oh, the harvesters?
Yeah, new gas harvesters added.
Yeah. So they are for exhumers, whereas
Okay.
before the gas harvester was only for the frigates, and you could put it on any ship with a turret slot. Now they've putting in dedicated gas harvesters that are kind of like strip miners that will go on the exhumers and the barges, and those will be available for mining, as well as the old ones will still be there for the frigates and the turret ships.
So now the exhumers and the barges, the mining ships, can mine anything. Sounds like.
Correct.
Okay. Where that used to be kind of a specialized thing. What about Mercoxit? Didn't you need a special ship for that?
No, well, yes and no. Okay, so way back when you needed a skiff because the skiff had the skill to fit the deep core or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they did the change to the Rorquals and did the tier side on the barges and exhumers, they removed that, and they also removed the special ice mining thing for the Mackinac, turned that into rigs, and you could mine anything with anything. And as far as I know, in this patch, Mercoxit basically isn't really changing at all. Same skills, same uh, deep core miners, same everything. None of that's changing at all.
Is it still dangerous to mine Mercoxit? Because that rock blows up if you mine it. So you take some.
Well, it's a gas cloud and it's a percentage. So they're having the skill. So it used to be that if you had the skill to 5, I don't know, it was 100%, 50% or whatever, that the gas cloud would not show up. So they're reducing that skill. So now there's a bigger chance that the gas cloud will show up. But I don't think the gas cloud has changed since like 2010 or whatever.
Yeah.
So it basically wouldn't even really scratch a modern exhumer. It wouldn't even be an annoyance.
It's not dangerous anymore. Right?
Yeah, the base shield regen is probably enough to outdo it. But then again, I don't know if they've buffed the cloud either. So if they've buffed the cloud, then maybe.
So it was always a cloud.
I really don't know.
It was a cloud that formed around the rock that you were mining, and the cloud did damage
Correct.
to your ship. And that was the only rock that did that.
And also too, that was way back when the Rorqual boosts and this kind of stuff, you had to get a lot closer to the thing. Now, as far as I know, recently you can even outdistance the cloud with the laser. So I don't know if that will still be a thing either.
That's too bad. That was really inventive, and I like that kind of imaginary gameplay where there are other hazards besides rats in belts, that could kill you, or players that are hunting you. It would be neat to see the environment get aggressive towards you if you're mining. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, last one. So mining, and then we'll talk about what's not in here. But the last one is mining modules and mining drones updated with residue multipliers. What is a residue multiplier?
Residue is the official name for wastage, I believe.
Okay, so that's what they renamed it to. Residue. Residue is what? Left behind. I think a residue is, left behind stuff when you're cleaning windows or something. Right.
Well, the easiest way to I explain it is if you are a woodworker and or you use a skill saw or a table saw, when you do your calculations for wood, you have to calculate how much wood you actually use due to the thickness of your blade, and it's called a kerf. So if you use a chainsaw, you may have a 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch kerf, and when you cut something with that chainsaw, you lose a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of material that makes the sawdust that's on the ground, right? If you use a table saw and you have a 1/8 inch kerf, then you lose less material. But if you're cutting a 6x6 with a table saw or a skill saw, it takes much longer than if you just use a chainsaw. Chainsaw just go right through it, but you lose more material. And it's kind of the same thing with the rock. If you use a big giant laser with lots of flares and you're just like, I'm cutting this sumbitch out and just there's a lot of
Yeah,
space dust
that's
or
what they should have
residue
called it.
out there, and you pull in the rest of the rock. Now, if you're like, okay, I want the most amount of this rock that I can get, and you use a little teeny precise laser, and it takes you a little bit longer to cut around and get out that little chunk that you want, you have less wastage and you're more efficient, but it takes a little bit longer.
Mhm.
And so then you get more, you get the same amount in your cargo hold, but less goes to residue.
This seems like a no-brainer to me because the laser is the blade, right? When you say kerf, you're talking about the thickness of the blade that's doing the cutting, because whatever it runs over is going to be turned to dust, sawdust in woodwork
Correct.
area. So space dust is waste. So you say this is how much dust is created by the laser. And instead of saying type A, B, and C, they should have said thicknesses. Like this is 100 millimeter. This is a 200 millimeter. And type C is like a 900 millimeter laser or something. And that just makes a lot of sense. That's how much kerf it has.
Yeah, I don't think people have problems with that per se.
I
Most
do.
people that I've spoken to just have problems with having residue or waste in general, as opposed to because
Yeah.
the the fact that they're doubling the material, the amount of ore in space, but then they're making you waste some to collect it, doesn't really double the amount that you're going to get in your cargo hold at the end of the day.
So they
It
feel
only
tricked.
doubles what's available to you.
Yeah.
So they think it's some double speak, and they're not happy about it. I can see their point, but I don't get to change it. So, yep.
Well, and so let's talk about what's not in there and then some of the controversies that these changes had earlier. And you just mentioned one of them, this whole wastage factor, people feeling like, I mean, this game's full of min-maxers, right? They want the minimum, the tightest fit they can get, or they want the maximum DPS they can get, but that's how they live. They want the best on one side or best on the other. And when you create a system that doubles their potential, they think, yay. And then you say, but you're going to waste a lot getting to it. They say, boo. I don't know how they could have
Yeah,
renamed that.
pretty much.
But
I
I
mean,
posed a question to you. They should put waste in industrial production. And you said, there is waste in there.
yeah, that's why you have the skill material, or you have the attribute material efficiency, because by increasing the efficiency, you lose the built-in waste. And it's the same way in mining. You have uh, waste with the higher yield stuff. And if you slow it down, then you go to no waste. And it's the same way in BPOs or manufacturing, except for the speed factor is not really there, but it's the same thing. You can work your way to reduce the waste, and you can do the same thing in mining. You can work your way to reduce the waste.
Right. So I wonder why people live with ME, material efficiency in production, and there's been really no complaints about it. They just live with it. But when they heard there was going to be waste in resourcing, people took that and got upset about it. So I wonder what the difference is.
You'd have to ask the people that are upset. I mean, again, I don't get to change it. A lot of people don't understand when I come on here and explain stuff. I'm explaining to you what's happening. That doesn't necessarily mean that I agree with it. After the first blog, there was a lot of things I didn't agree with, and people knew it. At this point, it's more acceptance. This is coming tomorrow, whether we like it or not. So I'm just trying to explain to you what's coming. If you don't like it, go shoot a monument. If you do like it, great, have fun. If you're somewhere in the middle, at this point, there's nothing we can do. It's coming tomorrow, period, end stop, right?
So
Um,
CCP in their video thanked people for going and testing stuff on the CC server, which is the test server, and talking to them through the forums and through CSM as well. So that's what you could have
yeah,
done.
Yeah, Sissy's another problem with this because there was the initial change and then there was the update and then there was update to the update and then there's been other changes. So people would be on Sissy on like Saturday, see something, Sissy got updated on Monday, then they complained about it on Tuesday. So then you try and figure out, one, is this on Sissy? Is this on TQ? Where did you get this data? What day did you get the data? And none of the ship traits were updated. Only the dogma or the attributes were updated. So they were looking at the traits, doing a calculation based on what they saw when they moused over a crystal, which was updated due to the dogma. And then, so the calculations were so off, it wasn't even funny. And they were like, why is this? Why is that? And it would take an hour to unwind what they were trying to tell me, and then how you have to let them know that, hey, you took data from here, which is good data, mixed it with data from here, which is not updated, and then came out with a number that's unrealistic, and trying to reverse engineer that. And oh, by the way, that data that was good on Saturday, but now it's Tuesday and it changed again on Monday. So you need to refactor that data and don't use bad data along the way. So it
Wow,
was
really?
extremely hard to work your way through that and explain to people that, and it, and for the words, not to get political, but some of the words that I didn't like the most from Nancy Pelosi's, you have to pass the bill to see what's in it. It's almost the same thing with this because Sissy was updated, I think, a couple days ago. So I think it's pretty close to what's going to go live now. Um, but there was just so many changes. Sissy was updated, but was in some state of from the original dev blog to the update to the updated update, and not everything was changed all along the way. So unless you did the raw math, getting a clear picture of what's happening, it was really difficult. And I wish it was different. Again, there's not much I can do about that.
Mhm.
Um, I tried to keep up with the Sissy changes, but they don't publish change logs or patch notes for Sissy. So I would have to see something and then go ask the dev who handles that. Hey, did this get updated? Is this updated to this or this or this? And then he would tell me, but that's NDA. So then I had to go back and kind of rework what I was trying to help someone through to say, hey, you need to look at this, but the update is here. So then use this number and, work it around to try and get people through it. And it was just a very tedious process. It was good that CCP put out the information early. It's the first time they've done that in a long time. Got a lot of feedback, good and bad. Um, and hopefully they'll still do it again because as much as
I don't
people
know.
didn't like it, it worked. They got much more wide variety of feedback, which is always good. But they also took a pretty big beating, and no one likes that. So people just can't, much like they can't separate me explaining something with my approval of it, they can't separate game from real life in certain situations, and that's unfortunate.
Right. So not only was it these are difficult changes because they affect so much, but you have layers of changes that are constantly being adjusted. So that becomes a very, very big problem for you to figure out if what people are calculating is even the right thing. And then you have a ton of people who have a ton of interest in this. And so therefore they're going to feel very strongly about it. So you have a lot of fuel, you have a lot of ambiguity. That must have been really tough to be able to cut through to some clarity to beat back some of the misinformation that's coming through or the mischaracterizations. And then, on top of all that, you don't even know what the motives are of people who are, creating panic among the people. But I think you almost said CCP poop. I think you almost did.
Do what?
I heard CCP, and then I thought you were going to say poop, but it was something else, or
no.
CC poop or something. The reason I say it is because I heard it and then somebody else said it, but I know you weren't thinking that.
Oh, sorry. No, I definitely didn't mean that. It's just yeah.
Okay. Well, so one thing that's not in this is compression. That was too hot to handle. They said we're gonna take another think at it. Right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, hmm. CSM was not given the details on compression nearly as early as some of the other stuff. We were given an overview, not the details. By the time the details came out, there were some other things, and I didn't have a real good chance to look at it. And then when it got closer, we started looking at it and determined that it would take, like if you had an R64 Moon and you wanted to compress it, it would take like 41 hours. I forget the numbers now. It doesn't really matter, but it was an insane amount of time. And then I started looking at what would it take for a Rorqual to support 4 hulks mining plus itself and compress all that. And we got down to some ridiculous numbers with the current system. I'm not going to go into it too much, but when I relayed those numbers and what I found and what would take or how could we work around this, it just got to be to a point where um, those changes just weren't viable in the time frame that was available. And I'm not even saying that change would have happened. It was just I took this as on my own. Hey, this is a baseline that I would start at as a Rorqual supporting 4 hulks. I'm not saying that's correct. I'm not saying that they should be able to support 2 or 4 or 20. I just chose that as my baseline, and then I work backwards from there as this would have to be the cycle times, and we have to fit this many modules. Plus, if that's your boosting work, then you've only got so many slots left because you have 3 boost modules, the Indie Core, and a Panic at a minimum. So that's only 3 module slots left to support 4 hulks. The cycle time would have to be like 11 seconds or something. I really don't even remember the numbers, but so there was some discussion about that. And then I'm sure they had their own internal discussions about this or that or the other thing. And it was eventually, put off until 2022. I have no idea what will happen. I'm kind of waiting for, what they want to do. I'm willing to work with the modules kind of as given. But in my mind, the module and kind of the way that they see it going through would have to change significantly. And I don't know if that's out of the realm of what they want to look at and go someplace else, or just right click, compress, and depending on your skills, you have this much efficiency. So you compress and you get this much out, 98% or whatever or 95%. I really don't know. And the reason I can say those is because all those numbers have been suggested to me, right? I mean, I've had hundreds of suggestions. Why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? And I really don't know now because we haven't been presented with anything. And I haven't put forth anything other than that baseline. So I just don't know.
Okay. Here's some questions. Will the Orca Rorqual cores be available tomorrow or just the BPO?
Okay, so the Orca cores, Rorqual cores, nothing's changing as far as I know, except the name and the stats. So they're Well, and the build requirements I think are increasing a little bit. I think I saw that on Hobo Leaks. I'm not really sure, but they're essentially unchanged as far as availability. So they'll be there. The large core, the skill, and the BPO will be available tomorrow, as far as I know. So then, in order to make the Tech 2, you'd have to, of course, make copies, invent, build the Tech 1, then the Tech 2 on top of that. But that's going to be their availability as far as I know, and I don't have any inside information on that. That's just the way that it normally works, and there you go.
All right. Any other questions? Quickly put them in there. Otherwise, we'll wrap up. Here's another question. Any predicted changes to the faction cruiser future prices? At the moment, BPCs are worthless. This is from Go With The Flow.
Let me see here.
I've seen market prices.
Per the update to the update to the update. We still plan to make adjustments to PI as per our plans to reduce manufacturing costs. More on the winter outlook blog coming soon, and currently considering the reduction of volume for all PI tiers. So I would say the answer to the question is yes. It is. Is it as much as people want or whatever? I don't know. But to me, if they reduce, I've put forth a set of changes that I'd like to see on PI, specifically for the extraction process. And most of it, in addition to reducing some CPU and power grid for launch pads and silos and power grid for extractor heads, to get a few more extractor heads out there, one of my things I put forth was to increase the silo, launchpad, and customs office volume for storage. If they reduce the volume of the PI, that would essentially do all of that except for the CPU and power grid reduction. So in theory, the PI should be more easily extractable at that point. And if it's more easily extractable, then the price should drop. In addition to adjustments to PI, hopefully it would drop the price of faction ships a little bit. Honestly, once they're in a place and want to start talking about that, I'll probably look at it a little bit more and see if there's any low-hanging fruit that can be trimmed there, and start suggesting that. But honestly, I've been so caught up in this patch and trying to get ready for compression and getting numbers and stuff in line for, stuff that's coming up that I really haven't had a chance to look at it too much.
Got it. I was trying to find somebody posted. Here they are. Interesting stuff. Let's see if I can bring this up. This is a faction. Well, actually, this is a Dracovic. That bigger. You can see the price.
Any of the Trig and Edencom stuff is different because not only does it use regular stuff and the stuff that we added in the industry update, it uses a bunch of stuff that's either drops from Abyssals or stuff from the LP store. And also those ships, that's a whole different ball game of balancing the right costs there.
So this is different, but I'll show you another example. This is the Phantasm, which is a faction ship. I think it's a pirate faction cruiser. You can see its price just goes off the charts, and you can also see that they stop selling as much as they were. They're probably selling about half as much per volume, but the price has just skyrocketed. What do you think of that?
How much are they right now? Just out of curiosity.
I don't have my client open, but I don't know if anybody has a client open. If you can put in Phantasm on the market and let us know what it is. It's over 180 million. It looks like.
Okay, 180 million. I would. So a regular cruiser is what? 10, 12, 15, somewhere around there.
Yeah, they're way over. They're close to 360 million for a Phantasm.
Okay. Yeah, I would say there would probably be room there to trim trim some price for sure. There is a default ceiling though, based on you just being able to buy the ship with LP. So that's probably where most of them have come from. The original comment though was about blueprint copies. So if you run a um, whatever, one of those sites, and you get a blueprint copy as a drop, you used to be able to sell that for quite a bit of ISK, and then people would just build out the ship, and it was typically cheaper than the LP cost if you just went to the store and bought the ship with LP.
Right.
That kind of flipped on its head. So now, even if you sold the blueprint for zero and built the ship, it would probably still cost more than what they are on the market because of the LP conversion. So that is a thing. I know it's a thing. I just have to wait for
Yeah.
CCP to be willing to talk about it, and then we can try and come up with some ways to make that at least fair across the board. And I don't know if they want LP to be cheaper or building to be cheaper. I would imagine you want building to be at least somewhat cheaper and marketable.
Mhm.
But I don't know for sure, and I haven't asked them. So,
Well,
but once we get to that conversation, then that's something we definitely should look at, because I on the on just what you've told me, that seems a little out of whack. But then again, there's always
well, there.
three sides to the story. What you hear, what you know, and somewhere
Yeah.
in the middle type thing.
Go with the flow. He asked the question earlier. He adds here, Phantasm prices also jumped since their use in ESS bank robbing, but the BPC and thus the DEDs to drop those is now pointless. He's pointing to what you just described, which was initially the drop, finding a blueprint for a faction ship was a great thing because it went for a lot of money because the build cost to make it was the same as its, whatever cruiser was. So for the price of a cruiser plus the blueprint, which was expensive, you could have a faction ship. And that was going to completely change when they did these these production changes a while ago, a few months ago. But what we always knew, and we talked about it here, was there was going to be a safety valve on those prices because you could always just buy the ship from the faction itself. And it looks like that safety valve kicked in and is keeping the price of a blueprint completely useless because you can buy it cheaper off the actual loyalty point market than you can by finding that blueprint and building it. Because the build costs changed. That's what happened. The build costs changed. So now the blueprint's cheap, but the build costs are too expensive. Just get it off the LP store. Okay. And I guess CCP will have to figure that out.
Yeah, correct. And we have to get to a point where they're ready to talk about that for with everything else going on. There's only so many devs.
Got it. All right, guys, thanks very much for hanging out with us for an hour and a half. Kenneth, thanks so much for your time. And even though it's a very difficult thing to get through, you're able to give us some clarity and some information on what's coming out. We've been looking at what's coming out tomorrow. And so just real quick, here's a recap. Doubling the resources that are going out, reducing the bill of materials required for subcapital and capital ships, balance adjustments to various mining and industrial ships, or processing skills are going to be revamped. You're going to get some extra skill points back as unallocated skill points. Mining crystals added, old mining crystal blueprints migrated to new blueprints, new Orca industrial core, and changes to the new gas harvesters. So now you can harvest gas with exhumers and barges. And lastly, mining modules and mining drones updated with residue multipliers, residue being a new word for waste. That's what's coming in. What's not coming in is compression. That has been delayed. And also, you haven't seen PI added to R4 moons, and you haven't seen a change to the minerals that are in R4 moons yet. That's also kicked down the road. All right. Thanks again, Kenneth. Appreciate you coming by. Thank you guys for watching Talking in Stations. Hang out with us, Talking in Stations Discord, and keep an eye out for more shows this week. Take care, guys. We'll see you next time.